23,000 points, 12,000 rebounds, 4,000 assists. I mean, there are taller players, there are faster players, there are more physically gifted players, but yet you're in the top 5 to ever play the game. How did you make that happen?
Well, number one, I didn't like being poor. I wasn't going to get a degree in engineering or anything like that. But see, one reason I love sports, it could change your life. It changed my life.
Yeah.
I grew up in the project with a single mom, and I didn't know, but basketball saved me. It got me out of that environment. So once I started having success, you buy your mom a house, you buy your grandmother a house, and you're like, man, but you have to keep working your behind off. But I love sports because it just changed the entire dynamic of my life. I wasn't just some kid in the country, grew up poor, and that was my life. And it's only because of that ball. And once you started having success, like when I went to high school, I'm like, okay, now I got to get to college. Because at this time, I'm not thinking I'm gonna play in the NBA. Let's be realistic. I'm thinking like, okay, I'm gonna go to college for free. And then when I got to the NBA, and I'm like, ooh, these guys gonna pay me to play basketball. And I'm like, I'm staying here as long as I can. I mean, I'm like, hey, it is a great living. Sports are a great living. I mean, football's dangerous, but it's still a great living because you got guys who, like I say, what would they be doing? Because people always ask me this question. I always say, I'm not going to give you no bogus answer. I have no idea what I would be doing if it wasn't for basketball. I'm not going to sit here and act like I was a great student. But basketball means a lot to me because it changed the dynamic of my
Yeah.
life. And I tell these kids all the time, not just going pro. The reason I stress so much education because you get a chance to do what you want to do if you get that free education. You got so many people walking around here who are in debt and gonna be in debt for a long time. To get a college scholarship to me, is the system perfect? Not even close to perfect. But to go to college for free, I think is a really big deal.
Yeah, because you're not debt loaded when you come out.
Yes.
I would not have gone to college if I wasn't on a full ride scholarship.
Yeah.
I went on a football scholarship and I got hurt and all, but I mean, I didn't get killed and it put me in college.
Yes.
And otherwise, I guarantee you I wouldn't have gone. So I did go and then I went on and got graduate school and then
Mhm.
went on and got a doctor's degree, and here I am today. But I wouldn't have done it without sports.
But that's the thing I tell these young kids. I said, first of all, I wish every kid could play pro sports. It's the greatest living ever. It's awesome, but it's unrealistic. Less than 1% of all players gonna go on to the NBA, the NFL, or Major League
Yeah.
Baseball, and that's why I tell them, man, please take advantage of that free education.
Single mother, you're into projects. Your role models, the people you looked up to, were not
No,
the greatest role models. I
Yeah,
mean, come on, they're
but
criminals.
but I played basketball very angry in the beginning.
Yeah.
I was angry at my dad. I was angry at Miss Gomez. Miss Gomez was my Spanish teacher, and I flunked Spanish. I did. I flunked Spanish. First of all, I'm trying to figure out, even to this day, 50 some years later, why was I taking Spanish in Alabama? I tell myself that all the time. I joke. So I flunked Spanish, and I didn't get to graduate. And I stood next door at the baseball stadium on the top rung by myself. And I watched the entire graduation, and I cried unmercifully for like an hour. We only had like a little over 100 people graduate.
Right.
And I was so distraught. And every time I touched the basketball court, I was mad at my dad for not being there. And my dad actually flew across the country to see me graduate. He was not really in my life, but he flew from California to Alabama to see me graduate. And I flunked my Spanish exam. And I didn't graduate. He was furious. And
So you didn't get to walk the stage.
I did not get to walk. But I stood there for 2 hours, or like an hour and a half, and just watched everybody graduate. And I cried the whole time. And then I made in my mind that night, I'm going to get all these people back. It wasn't until I got older and realized, you know what? Okay, so actually what happened, remember the incident I had where I spit in New Jersey?
Right. You did not spit on an 8-year-old
No,
girl on purpose.
I did not.
She was not your target.
She was not. Well, nobody was my target. That was just stupidity on my part. But that night, first of all, I got suspended, which I should have got suspended. But I was sitting in a hotel that night, and I said, man, you got to calm down, because if you play on the edge, It's just a matter of when you're going to go over the edge.
Yeah.
And I sit down, I say, you know what? I forgive my dad. He wasn't there. We grew up poor. It sucked. But I got to play basketball for me. Then secondly, I said, you know what? It's actually my fault I flunked Spanish. It's really not Mrs. Gomez's fault. I flunked the exam. And from that point on, my whole basketball life changed. I said, I just want to be a great player and have success for myself. But going through high school, not when in college, I was trying to stick it to everybody. I wasn't mature enough to realize the stuff that happened in my life was my fault. And after the spit incident in New Jersey, I had to sit in that hotel room and say, man, what is wrong with you? And that to me, that actually was the turning point in my career.
Really?
It was because I was like, you can't play basketball angry. You play to be successful and you play for the love. You ain't trying to stick it to people. That's not because at some point you got to realize you don't be successful to stick it to people. You have to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm successful for me and the people around me. Not to say, yeah, remember when you didn't let me graduate? Yeah, that's for you, Miss Gomez. And then, like I say, you learn this stuff when you get older. I'm like, oh, actually, Miss Gomez, you're not the reason I flunked Spanish. You just took you just was teaching the class. But that was the turning point for me in life, to be honest with you, because I didn't play anger from that night on.
Really?
I did not.
So you're standing there watching everybody graduate, breaking your heart because you didn't, but you didn't blame yourself then. You blamed her then. How did you get through Spanish? You eventually graduated because you went to Auburn.
Yeah, I went to summer school, but I was, that was traumatic, not marching.
Yeah, not walking that stage.
Yeah, that was traumatic.
Did you think people were making fun of you?
I only thought that because they were. I only thought that they were calling me the big dummy.
Yeah.
Kids are cruel. And so, like I say, when I played, I was like trying to get them all back. Like every kid who said, look at this dummy not going to graduate.
Yeah.
So when I went to summer school, when I went to college, I was like, I'm going to make all these people regret making fun of me. And it was a really, like I say, because you have to grow up and mature. And like I say, I was like, no, man, it wasn't Miss Gomez's fault. And I say, my dad wasn't there. He wasn't there. I got to move on.
23,000 points, 12,000 rebounds, 4,000 assists. I think you made your point.
It worked. It worked out good for me. But I tell you what, Doc. When you're growing up in the projects, like I got a couple thousand people in my little hometown. Man, sometimes I sit around and say, I can't believe my life. I mean, I can't. I'm so lucky and blessed, and I'm not just saying that to snuggle up to you. Like when you're growing up in this environment, you're living in the projects, and now 55 years later, I'm like, man, I've had a pretty amazing life. I mean, it's amazing.
If you hadn't gone basketball, what would you have done with your life?
I don't even know, to be honest with you, and I don't want to give you no fake answer. I have zero idea.
There was no plan B.
Well, because I had success as a freshman. I led to SEC. I was in college for 3 years. I led to SEC in rebounding for 3 years. And one of my coaches said, if you get 10 rebounds a night, because right now, if you look at the NBA right now, I think there's probably only 7 or 8 guys averaging 10 rebounds a game.
Right.
He says, if you get 10 rebounds a night, son, you're going to be in the NBA. And I'm like, that's going to be my specialty. I'm going to get me at least 10 rebounds a night. My only regret about college was I was not mature enough to lose weight sooner. Because I played at 300 pounds in college until Moses Malone, who's probably the most influential person in my NBA career, he made me lose 50. Well, he didn't make me. I asked him why I wasn't getting to play. And the true Moses Malone, he said, "You fat and you lazy." And I said, "What?" He says, "You're fat and you're lazy." He said, "But you're only lazy because you're fat." And he says, "You can't play at 300 pounds in the NBA, Charles. You can do it in college, but you can't play because the players are too good." And happenstance, me and Moses lives in the same building. And that's why I call him Dad. He says, if you want to get in shape, I'll help you. He met with me before practice, every day, after practice. And so at that point, I was about 295, somewhere in there. He says, let's just lose 10 pounds. I got to 285. Now obviously you can work harder. And he said, let's get to 275. And now I'm starting to get to play. Then we get to 265. Now I'm starting. And then I get to 255. Now I'm really playing well. I get to 245, but I don't have any energy or strength. He says, okay, now we know what your weight is. So I played my entire career at 255. But Moses, when he got me that weight off of me, my college coach was a good coach, but he didn't have that. He couldn't get the weight off me. I didn't work hard enough. I was having success. That was probably my biggest problem. But then when I got to the NBA and couldn't play, Moses got that weight off of me.
How'd he do it?
I had to learn 2 words. I'm full. We always joke around. I mean, number one, you have to change your diet because you can only work out for so much.
Yeah.
You got to change your diet. But man, he met with me every day before practice and after practice.
Really?
It was awesome.
Man, that's a gift.
That is a gift. But Doc, that's the difference between this generation and my generation. My generation listened to the older players. Like they taught me how to save my money. They taught me how to dress. You tell these young kids today, they're like, yo, don't be the old man, get off my lawn, trying to tell me how to spend my money. I'm about what I want to. I'm like, dude, I'm not trying to tell you. I'm trying to tell you how this movie ends. You're going to be one of those 80% of fools who are going to be like, what happened to all my money? What happened to all my money? I'm like, dude, I've been in the NBA since 1984. I see how this movie ends. Like, I always use this analogy. One of my favorite movies is The Perfect Storm. George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg drown every time.
Yeah.
Like, every time I watch that movie, I'm like, they're gonna make it. It's kind of like these young kids when you see them like, yo, man, you got 7 cars and you got a posse, and I'm reading that you're going out every night. This movie gonna end badly.
You're gonna drown every
Yeah, you're
time.
gonna drown. I said, Mark Wahlberg, him and George Clooney drown. No, they didn't get saved. No. But I tell these kids, like, yo, man, I'm not trying to be a pain. Like, I bought 6 cars. And Moses and Doc, like, yo, man, why you got 6 cars? You can only drive 1 at a time.
Yeah.
And they're like, take all those cars back. I said, first of all, he says, pick one. Pick one and take the rest of them back. And they sit me down. They said, Charles, it's not the fact that you can't afford 6 cars. It's the fact, like, all these cars cost over $100,000. $500,000 in 2 years, 5 years, 7 years. It's gonna be worth millions of dollars. This money you make now got to last you the rest of your life. He says, yeah, you can afford 7 cars now, but when you need that money, when it's over, and that's the lesson I try to. But these young kids today, man, they think we're just old geezers.